independence, it certainly does help. But I do want to mention, although I worked at the SEC and I am a practicing lawyer, I don't give investment or legal advice in my role as a financial coach. So anything that you see today is not going to be, specific legal advice or creating an attorney-client relationship. Apologies for all the disclaimers, but I'm a lawyer, so that's part of what I do. And just a little bit in terms of if you want to get in contact with me, as Allison said, you're going to have access to all of these slides. You can just pop your email directly to Allison if you don't want to share it with the whole group, and we'll make sure to get a copy of the slides to you. But that way you'll have my contact information and obviously the address for my website where you can see the services that I offer. And in connection with Alexandria Library, I'll be offering free counseling sessions. So if you mention this financial independence session, then you can get a free 1-hour virtual session with me to talk about your own personal financial situation. And now I want to turn it over to Financial Coach Holly, and she's going to be taking us through financial independence as your answer to the daily grind.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for introducing me, and welcome everybody. And I'm so happy you are here. And I'll go ahead and also put in a little disclaimer here that this presentation is for informational purposes only, and you should not act upon the content or information without first seeking appropriate professional advice, because I am not a lawyer, CPA, or financial advisor. I am a financial coach. So let me give you a little background as to who I am. A moment here. So my name is Holly Grosvenor. I'm owner and financial coach at Microstuff LLC. I'm a native to the Northern Virginia area. So a little bit of my background is I've been doing financial coaching professionally for over 2 years now. But before that, I was a stay-at-home mom for the last 9 years and also worked doing volunteer work, sort of coaching on and off as a treasurer volunteer for a local moms club, which is Moms of Multiples, as well as co-chair as a new and expected mom, helping moms that just had babies and or were expecting them. And then before that, before I had my twins, because I'm a daughter and twins, I worked in federal government contractor and project management and software integration. And as I'm also similar to like what Jessica said, we're not giving here legal advice or investment advice. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and get started to discuss what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over what is financial independence. And we're going to go over why should you reach it and how to reach financial independence. And we will have a section of questions and answers. And so you can hold off on all your questions and answers till we get to that point. And I'm sure you will, and we'll be happy to answer those. And at the end, we'll have a quick conclusion and go over other things and anything else that needs to be said. So let's get started. What is financial independence? So the definition that we're going to go over today is financial independence, or FI, as a lot of people like to call it in online and books and community now, is the moment your assets, which are investments, produce enough income for you to live off of for the rest of your life without the need to work for income. So a lot of people may come in and they'll say like, oh yeah, financial dependence, maybe from a teenager's perspective, or, a parent of a teenager, is when someone can support themselves without needing parental support or something like that. That is, a great definition, but that's not the definition we're talking about today. We're talking about somebody not having to work again. And so we're going to get a little bit more into like the why and the how here, but really want to emphasize and understand this definition. The easiest way to discover or reach this is understanding how much of assets that you have that are liquid so that you could live off of them and for 30 years or 40 years or longer, obviously. But let's go ahead and talk about why you want to start going towards this route of reaching financial independence. So let's go ahead and why should you reach it? So why should you reach financial independence? So, and when we talk about the grind, working, 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week and being exhausted and feeling lost. Is this something I really want to be doing for the rest of my life? Maybe something that may be popping in your head. So what are you passionate about? What is it you want to spend a lot of your time doing? What would you rather be doing in your time? So I'd like you to think for a moment about things that you love to do. And that's those start to get you to really start thinking about that why, if you want to work towards financial independence. And then if you didn't work, what would you do with that time? So think again about 3 other things that you wish you could do more of. So I'll use myself as an example, and my family, my husband. So one of my things you're gonna probably laugh at, but this is what I love, is my passion, is of course spending time with my family and traveling and going things around this area and enjoying them. And I love crafts. I love spending time creating things and also doing things around the house of creating crafts and things like this, which I've been able to do quite a bit of during this time period of this pandemic. But these are things that make me happy. They excite me. They're things that I enjoy doing. So then let's look at what I want to do more of. So if I could do more of something, it probably would be traveling more, enjoying more nature, eating chocolate, doing things with my family, being able to, and not have to necessarily have to, have a 9-to-5 job. So now, since we've talked a little bit about why and a little bit about my interpretation of it.
Oh, and sorry, Holly.
Please, Jessica.
Let me just jump in a little bit. So I am not at the point of financial independence. I will be completely transparent about that.
Yes.
But one of the things that I was thinking about when I was practicing law was, how can I get myself to a point where I don't have to practice law anymore? That was actually one of the biggest motivators for me to try to get my financial situation to a point where maybe I don't have to be making a lawyer's salary. I could be making a part-time lawyer's salary or some other type of career salary. And, financial coaching ended up being my career of choice. I'm much more passionate about it. I loved practicing law for a while, but it grates on you. And the idea of not having to earn that kind of income to sustain my life, to have a comfortable retirement, that was really a huge motivation in terms of trying to even approach financial independence. So there are sometimes questions of, well, does financial independence mean that you don't have to work anymore? It means that you don't have to. You can. Right. You absolutely can, right? And the whole point is, when we say assets, we mean that you have passive income that is coming in, whether that's, in the form of, your investments or a pension. No one gives pensions anymore, but if you had one, right, that's right. The golden egg. Those kinds of things are how you can determine if you can sustain your life and not have to work for someone you don't want to.
Absolutely. Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. You got to think outside the box. Some people, are constantly focused on, being stuck in a cubicle or stuck in a situation where they may feel like, okay, this is all I can do, and this is where we're talking here. Let's think about something different. The other thing is that I'm not emphasizing here the FIRE movement loves to talk about retire early part, and you don't have to do that. And that's something we can talk about too, also in a little bit more, but there's always the option is to retire earlier than, say, the typical retirement age that a lot of people like to focus on. It gives you, the thing about financial independence, it just gives you options. Oh my gosh, lots and lots of options. So let's go into how to reach financial independence. So first off, the biggest thing, top of the list here, is lowering your expenses. And I like to also put in increased income in the same category. And the reason being is because everybody's going to be in a different level here. Some people will find that they've already have their expenses as low as possible, so they really need to look at increasing income options. Other people, it's going to be where they have enough income, they really need to focus on lowering their expenses. And that's fine. And that's great. And this is why I want to kind of put them in that one category. The other one is increase your savings rate, and we'll go into a little detail about that, as well as investments, and then making sure that you work towards each of these. Okay, so lowering your expenses and increasing income. So definitely, like, and Jessica and I have talked about this a lot. As a financial coach, this is something we work a lot with our clients on is start simple, lower your expenses one bill at a time. Look at making life simpler. Really paying attention to all your bills, making sure all bills are paid, paying bills automatically, looking at every bill, like subscriptions. There's subscriptions nowadays. There's so many of them out there, and people kind of forget like which ones that they've signed up for. So being aware of those, like, are these necessary expenses to have? Do I really need to have those? Insurances, making sure that you have the right insurances and making sure that you have enough, making sure that it's the right amount. Grocery bills, double checking to make sure that are we really efficiently shopping. Household expenses as well, making sure that you're spending just what you need for those household needs. One thing we did, like when we first started learning about financial independence several years ago, and I'll also put the caveat in here, we're not quite at FI yet, but we've been working on always being pretty frugal since I was very young. My husband and I, when we really learned about it, we really got into this, where we focused on all of our bills. We lowered them as much as we could. We really cut our grocery bill a lot. And then the other thing is, like, we even looked at our electricity. We even looked at our heat. We looked at our air conditioning costs. We looked at all these other ways to optimize and really make sure that we were spending efficiently so we could figure out other ways to save.
And Holly, let me just jump in there. One of the things that I learned when I was just starting out on my journey to try to achieve financial independence was, look, you're probably not going to get there by stopping your latte habit. Now, granted, if you're spending $10 a day on lattes, then yes, that might help. You should probably think about lowering that, or buying a super nice coffee machine that you buy once and you can use over and over again. But taking a look at your large recurring expenses is where you're really going to get the biggest bang for your buck, because you're going to save every single month. So negotiating a lower cable bill, yes. As Holly was talking about, lowering those utilities. I had, I finally took the time to look at the different insurance plans that were offered by my employer. When I was a lawyer, I was too busy to look at anything. And I just bought the most expensive plan because I figured that's going to protect me the most. I won't have to worry about it. And when I finally actually looked at the plans that were offered and compared them to the doctors that I was already seeing, I realized that there was a middle of the road plan where all my doctors were in network, which meant I could lower my premiums by $400 a month just by switching to the lower plan, but still have the same kind of coverage. And it's that kind of research and that kind of digging that can really, really pay off. So of course, we want you checking your grocery bill and, the difference between shopping at Whole Foods all the time versus getting some of your, produce from maybe a farmer's market and, some of your meat from, a butcher or things along those lines. You can find really good deals, but that takes a lot of legwork. Whereas if you spend one afternoon looking at a really big recurring expense and trying to figure out how to lower it, that's going to pay you back in dividends, and you're going to get your time back for sure, but you're absolutely going to be saving a lot of money in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you say that, one thing to mention is to look at those things regularly. I mean, this isn't something you just look at once and make a decision on, but like you said, with healthcare, with other insurances, with other big bills, is making sure that it's being efficient, and there isn't something else out there where you could get a better deal. Like cell phones isn't a good example, because there are always new cell phone plans are out there, to always making sure that you're using something that is efficient, works well for you, for your needs, but also is cost effective. And we've saved a lot. We've cut cable about more than 6 years ago. We also have reduced our cell phone bill the same way. And we've done the same thing with a couple other household expenses as well. Like we were realizing, wait a second, we don't really need to spend it this much on this type of expense. So definitely.
Can you dispel the myth that everyone who's interested in financial independence just eats rice and beans every day?
Yeah, no, not at all. And that's the thing is like, it's value expenses, it's like value budgeting. You may have heard that term before. It's like, my husband and I, we like to spend our money on things that we value. Like, what is it that makes us happy and like really improves our lives? So for instance, we may splurge on, going out to eat, because that's a nice value, to us. But we also know that we're living within our means. It fits within our budget. And that means that we're going to maybe spend less in another area. So yeah, definitely. It does not mean that, even though I do have a good rice and beans recipe. But yeah, definitely, like, it does not mean that.
All the time. Just not every day.
Yeah. No, not at all. And in fact, I'll say this, like in the beginning, when we first learned about FI and financial independence, we reduced our grocery bill by quite a lot. But we had already been frugal. It wasn't like we were way overspending, but we were really paying attention to those things. And of course, my kids have grown, they're older, and your kids are older too. Like, they eat a lot. So our bill has creeped up. Not to say it hasn't over time, but we've worked ways to adjust for that. And that's one thing that you have to just be aware of when you do see those things increase, to find other ways to, balance it out. So the other aspect of lowering expenses is reducing debt, all debt, trying to figure out ways to, work on reducing your credit cards, reducing any personal loans, and obviously college debt, because this definitely really puts a lot of drag because of the interest rates and so forth. We've been personally, my family, we've been debt-free except for our mortgage since 2008, by living within our means and saving. And it's been really helpful where we've been able to really increase our investments.
And I will put a plug in. There is a YouTube video on the City of Alexandria Library's YouTube channel on understanding student loan repayment options. So that I did. So
Yes.
If you have questions about how should I be approaching paying down this student loan debt that Holly has told me I need to pay down, check out that presentation because it's a morass.
Yes, definitely. And I would love to get in more depth on debt, obviously, but like, I want to make sure we don't want to make this presentation hours long. So, I'm just going to a quick overview there. So after reducing expenses, and of course, working towards paying off debt, and again, this is something where I don't want you to think that you can't do this unless you're debt free. Don't ever think that. You don't, like, I still have a mortgage. You can still have credit card debt. You can still have student loans, and still work towards this. That's what I also want to emphasize. So reducing expenses and looking at what you want your life to look at ways to increase your income. So in some instances, like for instance, if you do have the debt, increasing your income could be one that could help reduce that debt. Also, increasing your income is another option to use that money towards your investments. So, and other creative ways to think of that is think about either getting a better position, possibly an additional position, like a side position, or like a side hustle, as a lot of people like to call it. We've done, or going back to school for additional education. Personally, we've done like things like selling things like on eBay or like local, Facebook Marketplace and things like this, because that has helped reduce our expenses, which is huge because like if we'll buy something that's used, say on Facebook Marketplace, but then we'll go ahead and resell it when we're done with it. And that has been a really great thing on our budget. So, and a great way to increase our income.
And I will say this, whenever I work with my clients, I always ask them, if you had a choice, would you prefer to reduce your expenses or earn more income? And believe me, everybody has a preference. The difference is you can only reduce your expenses so much, right? And then you're going to get down to the bone and then you're going to be there. So adding in the element of earning more income really has limitless capacity.
Yes.
Now, the point is to get to a point where, you no longer have to earn income anymore. But if you can, front load all of your income earning years and really attack it, then that's where you're going to get all of the magic happening, where you can actually achieve financial independence and no longer feel pressure to be earning that kind of income.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, and there's so many, I should say, more opportunities too. Um, when you get to that point, because you then feel like, hey, I can do what I want to do. You're not stuck. Let's say I have to do this job because I live in this place. You can move any place you wanted to if you want. So let's go into increasing your savings. So now we've talked about decreasing expenses and increasing income. Now we're going to increase our savings, and we're going to talk a little bit more about like the depth of financial independence here. So you need to increase your savings rate. So we're going to get into a little explanation about savings rate in just a moment. Basically, it's a little bit more detail about it. Basically, it's a percentage of what you're saving, and it gives you sort of like an idea as to how well you're doing on your savings. Because if you look at the percentage of your savings, you'll also know the percentage of your expenses as well. So if your percentage of your expenses are really high, your savings actually is going to be lower. If your savings is higher, your expenses are lower, which then means that you don't need as much of investments in order to cover your expenses over time. So we'll go into that. One thing that I always talk to my clients about is paying yourself first. It makes it so much easier. Automatic savings just is the simplest way, it's the easiest way to get there. Making sure you have emergency funds. I want to make sure that that's in there when I talk about increasing your savings, because as you may be working towards paying down debt, also make sure you have emergency funds, especially right now, since we've been going through this pandemic. It's been more obviously of interest for people to have 3, 6 months, maybe even a year's worth of emergency funds just in case. It's so important. And it gives you that flexibility as well. So purchasing investments or getting to the point of investments are assets is what we were talking about here, of having them equal 25 times your expenses. So as I mentioned, as you're increasing your savings, and you're using your savings rate, which we'll go into, you're trying to have enough assets to live off of so that you don't have to work again. But you have to base that off the expenses, not your income, but your expenses. Because if you know what your expenses are, which you have a really pretty good idea what they may be based on studying them and tracking them, then you can figure out basically what your financial independence number is going to be. So a lot of people will use the terminology of 25 times your expenses or 30 times your expenses. And that's based on the 4% rule or the 3% rule, which is actually a study that was done several years ago that was focusing on if these investments were in passive income, as Jessica mentioned earlier, then you would be able to live off of those assets over a 30-year or a 40-year plus time frame. So, and that's where the Financial Independence Retire Early community talks quite a bit about.
And so just to say, these are benchmarks, right? Of
Yes.
course, we can't guarantee that if you have an investment nest egg that is 25 times your annual retirement expenses, you are guaranteed to never need money again. Nobody can guarantee that. And if they do, you should run screaming and find another financial advisor. But this is just kind of, a rule of thumb that you can use. And I think one of the most important parts that people sometimes miss when they're doing these calculations is you need to think about what your retirement expenses will be.
Yes.
You're not going to be saving money anymore. You're hopefully not going to be paying for college, right? All of these very large expenses that you may have now in your life will hopefully not be in your retired life. So you shouldn't necessarily take your current expenses. That would just be to do an approximation. But think about the kinds of things that will fall away from your retirement budget, and think about the things that might increase. If you're planning on traveling because you want to be a jet setter in retirement, then you need to account for that. If you're going to have very high healthcare expenses, which is also something that we cannot predict, you should always account for that. Unless, you come from a military family or you have, some sort of guaranteed healthcare that you're going to have access to in those early retirement years before you would qualify for something like Medicare. So that's how you want to be thinking about your baseline number, your annual expenses. And then as Holly said, you want to multiply that number by 25 times 30 times to be really conservative. And if you have a nest egg that is that size, that nest egg should be able to cover those expenses for the rest of your life. Now, that being said, again, if you have some sort of passive income stream that's coming in, then you don't need it from your nest egg, right? So if you are getting VA disability or you get a pension, then that should lower the amount of money that you need to cover your expenses. And so these are some things that you want to think about. It's not just kind of take everything you're spending now, multiply it times 25, and then you're going to be golden. There's a little bit more digging. And sometimes the digging will end up you needing less money than you think you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what's key about this is the expensive aspect, because I think a lot of calculators out there focus on the income. They say take your income and then you multiply it by a certain number of years, and then it becomes this really big number that looks unachievable. This number looks a little bit more like achievable, and which it is for a lot of people. And like Jessica said, you really do want to make sure you think about what your expenses are going to be like in retirement. Whether you do early retirement or you do a later retirement, it doesn't matter. Think about what you think those expenses may be. And they may be higher than you have now, and they may be lower than you have now. And that's a really good point. Because, some people will retire, when their kids are in college, and that's a completely different scenario than if they're retiring after their kids are in college, or maybe they're waiting, and like she said, like a passive income, which we'll get into too. Other options as well, not just, say, investments in the stock market of index funds or mutual funds or something like that. There may be real estate passive income. First, we're going to talk a little bit about savings rate, because I brought it up, but I thought I'll go into a little bit more depth on this. So bear with me as I go over this. The points of a savings rate is to see where you're at and see how you progress over time. And a savings rate is just a percentage of your income. Now, there are a lot of different ways to calculate savings rate. There are, I would say, at least like 5 or more different ways. So everybody's kind of like a different definition of this. So this just is what I'm going to present as a simplistic way of doing it. The magic of a savings rate is it gives you a goal to work towards. It also works as a way to understand where your expenses are, and the fact that if your savings is higher and your expenses are lower, you can achieve FI faster. So let's go ahead and look at a little worksheet I created here. This top part, so a lot of people will focus on savings rate per year, which is perfectly fine. But sometimes you may not know, okay, how much you've earned in your total earnings until you get your W-2 or you've gotten all your paychecks. So I created this worksheet for anybody to get a paycheck and they can quickly calculate what their savings rate is today. So you get your paycheck and you can look at it and see your regular earnings, what that is at the top, which is the earnings for that pay period, your total taxes that you're currently paying, earnings after taxes, anything that you've decided or equals the earnings after taxes when it's subtracted from it. Any other income that you may have earned, say from a side hustle or, any other, maybe selling stuff or something like that. Then you go ahead and put in there your employer match. So if you happen to get 401k, some sort of pre-tax investments from your employer, go ahead and put that in there too, to add it back into your income because it's part of your income. So I'm going to use a quick example here. Let's see this person here who makes $50,000 a year. This is approximately what their paycheck would be like, their income. So this would be their total earnings is $2,083. Their taxes are about $371. So that's what their earnings is $1,712. They happen to sell a couple items, so they were able to add in $50 of income. So that's their total earnings, but they also went ahead and got their employer match, and their employer happens to give them 6%. So it's roughly $125. So total income is $1,887. So here's the total savings section. The total savings section is going to have anything that was pre-taxed from that they contributed, that they're going to, that's considered part of your savings, and you should include this in your savings rate. And that includes your 401k, your HSA, 457, 401a, there's a lot of different types of pre-tax, as well as your employer match, and then post-tax savings. So for instance, you may be saving in another type of vehicle, or you may be saving in your savings account towards your emergency fund. Anything, all of that is considered savings. So let's go ahead and look at our example here. So our example here is that this person that has a $50,000 a year income, they contribute $229, which is 6% match to match with their employer. They also contribute 5% to their HSA. And then they also have post-tax savings of the $50 because they want to start saving up for that emergency fund. So their total savings is $404. So simply looking at the math here, their savings rate is 21%, which is not bad at all. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to change it up a little bit and just show you that, let's say this person has just listened to my presentation and said, okay, I need to save a little bit more because I really want to work towards FI. I now see what I need to do. So let's use this as an example of them changing it up just a tiny bit.
And before Holly gets to the next scenario, I just want to make a point. When we say kind of, your additional savings, that should be savings that is actually saving for the long term. So if you're saving for a trip to Europe, or you're saving for a wedding, or you're saving for money that you're going to spend, that doesn't count as your savings rate because that's actually money that will not be there to help you in retirement. So this is really just counting the money that you're going to be able to use later on.
Right. Well, yes, exactly. And I think and again, everybody's going to have a different view on savings rate. There, some people will say, hey, they include all of that in their savings rate. Others, like Jessica and I agree with that it should be longer term savings is what we're focusing on here. So here's the example here for someone $50,000 a year. Again, they're deciding they're going to increase things just a little bit. The first thing I want to emphasize here and notice is that they increased their 401k contributions, and you'll get to see that in a second. That immediately lowered their taxes because it's pre-taxed. They actually are going to save $14 in tax savings. So that does increase sorry, that went back too fast. That increased their income actually slightly. I did not increase their income on this page. I just wanted to emphasize that, just the total income from that tax savings. So for the total savings, because they increased it to the 10%, and it's not a match, it's just 10% contribution, they have they increased their tax savings. So instead of $50 to $100, just those simple changes made it 28% savings rate. So going from 21% to 28%, it doesn't take much. So I just want to emphasize, a lot of people think, because they may hear savings rates as really high, big numbers. And yes, everybody agrees when you have a really high savings rate, that's wonderful. That's a great way to try to reach financial independence. It's a great goal to have, but I don't want to deter people from thinking that they have to jump on board and suddenly get a really high savings rate. So I'd say start slow and start working towards increasing that savings rate, and have this as a good something to start with. And let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about investing.
Oh yeah, one more thing on savings, and Holly mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of the best things about this this marker for testing your financial health is, as long as you're using the same formula and you're taking the same criteria and using them the same way, you can really see your progress. You can see whether, when you get a raise, you're letting lifestyle creep come in because your savings rate doesn't increase because you're spending more on expenses. If you make more money, your savings rate should be increasing as well if you are maintaining that same cost of living. And so using savings rate can really be a good indicator of how are you doing in terms of maintaining your cost of living, and also trying to maintain a goal of having a nice retirement nest egg, at whether that's early or whether that's at regular retirement. This is one of the most powerful indicators of financial health, because it not only tells you how you're doing, it gives you a really good way to tell how you're progressing over the course of your lifetime.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And again, like there is times where you'll see that your savings rate will go down because of certain circumstances, and then it will go back up. And so definitely, it's a good thing to monitor. So let's go into investing a little bit. So we're not financial advisors here. So we're financial coaches.
It's
So
like red alarms. This is so general.
so this is just general information here. So my focus, and I always tell this to my clients, is that making sure that you learn all you can about investing your money, making sure that you're educated and that you understand what you're doing. So investing's not hard necessarily. In fact, most of the time it's pretty simple. Thank goodness for technology. Almost all financial, companies that handle are all online. You can easily invest. Pretty much anybody can do it. It's not that hard to invest your money and send it in. What's but I want to make sure you understand that you're in charge of your money. You need to make sure you're aware of what you're doing, and if you do hire an advisor, I highly recommend a fee-only registered advisor who's open about fees, so that you can make sure that you have a plan in place that you're comfortable with and you're comfortable with them if you do hire one, and making sure you just understand what's going on. Okay, when you reach FI, earlier we were talking about expenses. The point I also brought up was the 4% rule, which is the 25 times expenses. The other rule is 3%. The idea is that when you do reach financial independence, you could take 4% out of your portfolio and live off of that, and then adjust it for inflation every year after that. And that's the main, again, a very general description of financial independence, and a definition of how you would use that money and take that out.
And I have to put a plug in. As a former lawyer in the Division of Enforcement at the Securities and Exchange Commission, I used to investigate registered advisors who were doing very, very bad things. So one thing that I always want to tell my clients, and anyone really, when you're giving someone your money to work with, you want to make sure that they are a fiduciary. So
Yes.
being, fee only is not necessarily a fiduciary advisor. You want to make sure that you're working with someone who is registered with your state securities regulator or registered with the SEC. That means that they have to put your interest first, not their commissions, not their company's profits, but you. And it's important that that duty is there, because when they don't, that means that you can get some relief. But if you're just working with a stockbroker or someone who calls themselves a financial advisor, all of these different names do not necessarily mean that they're a fiduciary. So it's something you want to look into. And there are you can check with FINRA, you can check with the SEC, you can check with your state securities regulator to see if they are registered. But that's how you'll know that you're working with a fiduciary. You can also check to see if there's been any malpractice claims against them or any bad behavior. But I always caution people that when you're going to work with a professional, make sure they're the right kind of professional, because they purposely use confusing terms so that everyone thinks that they're experts in the area, but you definitely want to find a fiduciary.
Exactly. And even some registered advisors will even call themselves fiduciary when they may not be. So like Jessica said, making sure you do a search for them and making sure you know what they're registered under. And that, like she said, FINRA is the best one to look up. Let's see here. Let's go in a little bit more. So this is where we'll get into a little bit more about the vehicles. So as mentioned earlier, we talked about pre-tax retirement investment vehicles. So that is just like a placement of where you're going to put your retirement funds. And so there's the pre-tax ones, like 401k, there's 401a, there's 403b. So if you're like working for a nonprofit or not-for-profit, there's also 457s, which you may see with government, especially for state governments. There's also the HSA, which is the health savings account, which is wonderful if you have that option. Usually it's for high deductibility plans. HSAs, what's wonderful about them is that they're actually pre-tax. Is a good way to describe them, is because you actually get two benefits since you're not taxed earlier on that money as well. The other thing is to look into is see if you qualify for a traditional IRA or Roth IRA, depending on your and that's Roth IRAs are after tax, but either one, because the benefits there are really good as well. Traditional IRAs usually have a very lower income requirement, so you have to look and find out if that's deductible or not. One advantage to traditional IRA and Roth IRA that you can also look into is a spousal IRA that a lot of people aren't aware of is that if you have a spouse that is a stay-at-home parent, you can contribute to a spousal IRA in their behalf. It's basically just contributing to their own IRA. What's nice is that it's a higher income threshold to be able to contribute to a traditional IRA that's tax deductible. So it's something to talk to your CPA about, as well as the Roth IRA for your spouse as well as yourself. Again, there's income limits on that as well. Now, the biggest thing to understand here is that these are all legitimate ways to reduce taxes and to save money. And so definitely take advantage of these while you can. And, while you're still doing some of the other stuff of reducing expenses or paying down debt, making sure that you're looking into doing these as well. So let's see here. Also, for a lot of people that still are, say, working for federal government, there's pensions, and in other types of companies in the area, there are still some of them out there, making sure you're aware of them. Also, teachers, for instance, for county or different counties have different sorts of pensions, and being aware of what those include and how many years of service you need. And in some cases, you may not need as many years of service as you may have thought. Also look at Social Security benefits and making sure, find out whether you qualify or not, if you have enough credits towards that. And also look at the possibility of rental property as a potential for income. Of course, that costs them more money to get into it, but and I'll bring up a little bit more information about that in a second. And last but not least is a taxable investment account. A lot of people haven't really talked a lot about this in general personal finance, but it's something that I like to always bring up to people to make sure that they're aware of it. That again, this is something where an advisor could guide you on as well, but it's another vehicle that could be used as, potential income that you can have at any time. Even though you may have to be taxed on it right now versus the retirement pre-taxed or after-tax vehicles, this is something you can easily take out and use when you need it to.
That's right. We don't have time in this presentation to go over what happens when you actually reach financial independence, depending on where you are in your life and what kind of distributions you can take from your different accounts, what kind of income streams are available to you. One thing to say is it will often be very difficult to reach financial independence if you are not taking advantage of something beyond the contribution limits for 401ks, traditional IRAs, and Roth IRAs, because it's just not enough money per year. And when you have a savings rate that is up at 30, 40, 50% of your income, that's probably well beyond those contribution limits. So it's time to start thinking creatively about what other types of investments you would be comfortable in taking on and starting to manage so that you can reach financial independence. Because if you're retiring at 40 or 45 or 50, you're not going to be able to get any of the money out of those tax advantaged accounts without penalties anyway. So it's important to start thinking about what other types of vehicles should I be considering if this is really a route that I want to take.
Exactly. And there's also lots of different articles about how to be able to do some of those things. But just like I said, that could be another whole presentation. So explaining sort of the bucket strategies that are available out there. So one thing I will mention is about real estate is that real estate investors do calculate things a little differently. And I just wanted to point that out because I know this is brought up for some, is that real estate investors tend to define financial independence more on the amount and the quality of income produced by their net worth. So using, and I'll use Coach Carson's quote here, using this income-based approach to financial independence, you've reached financial independence simply when your income from investments exceeds your personal expenses, which basically means that because your passive income coming in from from rental income eventually will get to a point where it'll just cover your personal expenses. And in some cases, that just means that at that point, you're considered financially independent. More, and this is more in the real estate investor view. So, but you still have to just make, as a financial coach, I'll put in a caveat in here, making sure that you still have enough savings there. So in case, you don't have renters, or you have expenses to cover the rental properties and so forth, are also well in there, included in there. All right, so here we go. So I want to make sure that there are lots of resources out there. You're not alone when it comes to financial independence and retire early. There's a lot more we can go into, and like, we can get into more strategies as to how it actually works when you do reach financial independence, like Jessica said, but that's it could be another presentation. But to start working towards saving, towards reducing expenses, you're not alone. There are a huge community of people available, and keep an open mind. Think of new ideas. There isn't just one size fits all at all. And that's one of the reasons why I love working towards financial independence is that, you can change your mind too as to what you want to do. Like, you may decide, okay, yeah, I want to take on a part-time job, or yeah, I want to go ahead and volunteer across the country, or so, another new idea may pop up. Let go on and mention lots of different resources of websites to check out. ChooseFI is one. The Academy ChooseFI Foundation has a wonderful course that's free available. Coach Carson has a good course as well as blog that focuses on real estate investing. Paula Pant also does as well. She does real estate investing, and she has a fantastic podcast, as well as ChooseFI does too. Julie and Kirsten from Rich and Regular have a fantastic blog, and they focus a lot on the Black community. Military Dollar, she's local, used to be local, female in the Air Force, that does a great job of focusing on the military and reaching financial independence. Doug Norman also has the military guide and focuses on financial independence and how he reached it at a very young age. Government Worker Fi is a fairly new blog, but focuses a little bit more on the federal government and perspective, and which is really great for those that are local in the area. And You Need a Budget is a program that I've been using and that I actually coach my clients with, that focuses on how to do simple budgeting using the money that you have in a zero-based budget format. And then Mad Scientist is another good resource to discuss a little bit more about the investing aspect of using your 401k and HSA and things like that. Great articles. Book sources. Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robbins, which is available at most libraries. You Need a Budget by Jesse Meekum is also available at most libraries in the area. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, so another good book. ChooseFI, Your Blueprint to Financial Independence, is a fairly new book, and definitely something to look into. Financial Freedom by Grant Savitar. Set for Life is by Scott Trench, is focused on real estate aspect. And I'll Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Seeth is also another one to look into as well. So all of these are a good starting point. There are so many more resources out there, but again, that could be lots of slides. So that being said, let's go ahead and now switch to questions and answers. So it's your turn. Anybody have any questions and answers? We can go over some answers.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, okay, my name is Rosalind, and I am currently right in that sort of, the best word for it is like a cyclone. I am renting. My lease is up in September. And also, I have a daughter who's starting college in the fall. I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is, as I hear myself talk, I'm not sure if this is the right question for this venue, but if it is, just let me know. How do I save for everything? And then also with the market the way that it is it smart to try to buy a home as a first-time home buyer instead of renewing my lease because the rates are so low? Is that a smart thing to do right around this time, seeing I have everything else, to do? I'm just not sure which way to start,
Those are some really great questions. I will definitely say, I think this is something where, and Jessica, feel free to also jump in here too. You would be really good candidate to go over all these details a little bit more, because there might be some more details that we need to know to be able to answer that best.
Okay.
Because I think because you do have a lot going on. College is a big expense.
Yes.
Well aware of that, and that's the immediate expense, at the moment. So we need to really see where you're at, where your income level is, what savings you have, and so forth, and to be able to really talk and go over that. So that would be something that might be either myself or Jessica could talk to you offline at a personal session.
Yeah,
Okay.
Rosalind, I'm not sure if you were here in the beginning, but Holly and I are both offering free individual sessions to anybody who mentions this program. Our contact information is going to be in the slides. So if you wanted to set up an hour-long session where we could actually go over those numbers with you, Holly and I take personal finance very personally. So
Okay.
but to your larger point, and I have done this with my clients, especially now with respect to buying a home. It really is a full holistic analysis of where you want to be, where you are right now. And I know I saw one of my favorite realtors popping in today, and also finding, there may be plans available where you have no down payment required. And so there are programs available, but you also have to make sure that being in a home is going to be right for you. We have some people where, purchasing a home is not a goal of theirs, and they have other goals they want to pursue. And so it really is a test of, well, is buying a home going to be the right investment for you, given your investment profile, how much risk you're taking on, and, everything about your financial profile. So as Holly said, of course, we have 1,000 questions for you.
Okay. And I wasn't sure, as I heard myself talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much information do I give? But but I guess this is a good place to start than any, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
yeah, definitely reach out to one of us, either myself or Jessica, because we're here. This is what we do. We love to talk about this stuff and really sit down with you and go over it. And like Jessica said, we've got thousands of questions we ask our clients. Sorry, that sounds like a lot, but because we want to make sure that you're comfortable with your decision making.
Okay. Well, and just one more thing. I missed maybe about 5 minutes of the slide. You said that your information was in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, and if you pop your email into Allison, she's the host for the meeting, then we can get you the slides. And unless you want to give your email to everyone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Here, I'll give you I'll skip through a little bit here. That's my contact information, and then just so everybody can see that, and then I'll go ahead and go back to the beginning to show Jessica's here.
Okay.
Just a minute.
Oh no, you can leave. Okay.
No, I'm fine with that. Here.
Oh, you're so good. There it is.
I just also wanted to pop in and say, I think it says Beatley Library. I am Allison, so if you chat to Beatley Library, then I will get your information and connect you with anyone as well. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make sure this is true for everybody else that may have the same question as to how to contact Jessica or myself, and I'll skip here to back to my slide one more time just to make sure.
Yes.
There's my contact info, just in case that was too fast.
We did have some questions that came up during the chat. So Holly, let me read those out to you.
Please do.
And I apologize if I mess up anyone's name. Gratis Blaze asked, does not working meaning not managing those assets as well?
Great question. Not working as in, not working is mainly the focus is not doing, not going to an office or not having to create income, but managing your assets, I would say that would be something that you're going to have to do, now and later. Now you can always hire a financial advisor to help with that, and or CPA too for tax purposes. So that's my answer. Jessica, you want to add anything to that?
Oh yeah, no, I think it really depends on the way that we define financial independence is you don't have to work if you don't have to. Yeah. So if you really love managing investments, it's your hobby, you love doing the research, you love checking out the different funds, and you love watching your investments grow, then that might be your day job because it's fun, you enjoy it, and you don't want anyone else managing it for you. If you're going to have someone else manage your assets, then you need to have enough assets that you can afford to pay them without it cutting into your other living expenses. And I think that's how we would define it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, another, and Gratis, tell us if that didn't answer your question or if you had follow-ups.
That's spot on. Thank you so much.
Great. And then, one of my clients, Salah Al-Chanati. Hello, Holly and Jessica. I love your work, Jessica. Thank you so much. How does owning your own business fit in the financial independence goal? Ooh, good question.
Oh, great question. I love it. So I think it really does depend on what you want. Like if you want to continue your business, continue your business. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like if you've reached FI and you still have your business, I mean, you could sell your business if you wanted to and, do something completely different, or you could just continue doing it. And, I've seen some people and in the FI community that have talked about this over and over again, how they just love working and they just, as soon as they've reached that, they feel comfortable, they feel, relief, and because they know that if they need to, they could always leave. In other circumstances, it could be where it's like, okay, yep, I'm going to go ahead and move on to another adventure, completely different. So Jessica, do you have anything else to add?
I think I would think of this along the lines that we were talking about real estate. If you own your own business, then you may decide that your test for financial independence is an income-based test. Does your business provide you the income that you need to live your life? Now, if you love your business and so you don't mind going to work at it every day, maybe that counts as financial independence for you. If you don't love running your business and you have to be there every day, then that probably wouldn't qualify as financial independence for you. But for example, if you kind of passively owned a company that somebody else was doing all the legwork and you were just the mastermind behind it and you loved it, then we could use the income-based test that we use for people who are in real estate in terms of, all of their passive income is enough to support their expenses, and so they are financially independent.
Yep,
thanks, Jessica.
perfect. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, okay. So we have another one. They're coming in fast and furious now. From Allison Farrow, I run into financial issues with the holidays, birthdays, weddings, and other times when giving gifts are expected. How can I alleviate that issue? Oh, Holly, I know you have a solution for this.
Well, I would say, okay, let's see here. There's several different ways, honestly. But my favorite, I guess, is I just love YNAB. Okay, you need a budget software. I know Jessica's going to laugh at me at this. So I like using that software because I can use that as like another sinking fund of savings for holidays and gift giving. In fact, I actually have a section just for Christmas and gift giving, and then birthdays and gift giving, and then other gifts as well. And my husband and I, we designate and say, okay, we are going to budget in there a certain amount. And we try to do that every month so that by the time Christmas comes, we have the amount that we have planned that we will spend on that. And we'll work really hard to stay within that budget. But yeah, it is a challenge because especially when you get into a point where, the kids, as an example, and I'm sure, Jessica, you can recall this, you've got the teacher appreciation, you got your other school, types of gifts for, other friends, birthday parties and things like that. So definitely making sure that you work towards guiding yourself towards a good number. The reason I also like YNAB to help guide you on those sinking funds is that you can actually look and see what you've spent in the past over time, so that you can say, aha, now I know, because we've experienced it, how much we have spent in those particular categories. And that has helped us stay on budget.
Yes, my solution is very similar. It just doesn't use the very fancy YNAB software. So I've had clients try it, and I will say this: YNAB is amazing, steep learning curve, but if you use it, you will love it. You just have to use it.
Yes.
So for the clients who are not interested in using it, I have a similar bucket system. So you have to have some idea of what you think you're going to be spending for that category, and you spend, many months saving up for it, so that when that thing comes to pass, you have the money ready to go. Of course, if you have something coming up in the next week, then, well, you're going to have to make up for that. But, it's really about just planning ahead. And it's not really fancy. It's not really exotic. And it does require a little bit of looking back, kind of, what did you spend last year, or making, a good faith estimate of what you think your costs are going to be, and then really being determined to save that money and not touch it for anything else other than what it is meant for in the future.
Right. Exactly. And one thing I'll say, so I've been using YNAB since 2014. One thing that my favorite feature, I guess I should say about it, is that when it comes to these type of sinking funds and saving up for these things, is that I then don't have to think about it as much. So for instance, when it comes to the Christmas, I'll use that example, is that I then, now that I know that it's automatically going to be saving in there because I know I'm going to save in that category, then it's great. I'm like, yep. It's there. I know I don't have to think about it anymore. And that's sort of like Jessica does, similar, where it's an automatic thing, correct?
That's right. Well, it's supposed to be.
Yep, exactly.
That's the hope. We've automated pretty much everything to stop us from hurting ourselves. That's
yes. Yeah.
Holly, we have another question on the math. Why do you multiply by 25 or 30? Is it 25 or 30 years? If so, what happens after that point? Do you want to go back over why 25 and 30 are the numbers we use?
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
The 25 and 30 was in reference to multiply your annual projected retirement expenses times 25 or times 30 to figure out what size investment nest egg you have to have in order to support you for the entirety of your retirement. We use 25 or 30 because that corresponds to the withdrawal rate that you're going to use to take the money out of your investment. So you have this big, huge egg, right? That's how it's supposed to be. And every year you're going to have to take money out to live on. So in order to not deplete it completely, right, and have it be able to last, we figure that you're going to take out at about 4%, which comes out to, you need 25 times to be able to take out 4% every year. And the 30 corresponds to a more conservative 3% withdrawal rate. So that's where the 25 and the 30 come from.
Yeah. And the 3% is now becoming more and more popular number to use just because people are living longer. So the number of years looks like it that makes the most sense.
And we also had a question from Sarah. She's read many books on personal finance and really interested in getting our suggestions on where to learn more about the different investing options. So many options: real estate, businesses, stocks, bonds, options, etc. It's overwhelming to figure out where to start to educate herself on these options to make an informed decision. Any advice on other resources, Holly, to look at different types of investing options?
Definitely looking at the resources that I've listed here would be a good start. Each of these authors have done a very good job, whether it's these blogs here that I've listed here, or the authors of the books have gone into some detail of that sort of stuff. But of course, also working with, a coach and then later a financial advisor who can go into more depth as to where you should invest in it's also another good option. But definitely reading up on these to find out what you're most comfortable with.
I would also say, so in terms of just straight investing, the Bogle Guide to Investing is kind of like the Bible for a lot of people who are getting into it. And it's Bogle, Bogle, and I'll type it into the chat and hopefully I'll get it right. But that's also a good kind of beginner book to just give you the entire layout of everything that you would need to do in the market, with a lot of emphasis on doing as little as you need to do in the market. So, that's something that a lot of people will point to. But if you're interested in more exotic investments, so if you're looking into real estate or, collectibles or, something like along those lines, I have found, with the internet now, there are communities, there are blogs. If you can stomach Reddit, you can check there. You have to be very careful about filtering, the information that's there, but there's very passionate people out in the blogosphere. And so, find something that you're interested in and then, figure out, well, what is going to be a good, credible group that I can, start communicating with, or a community that I can join, or blogs that I can read that are actually respected in the industry and provide good advice on those types of markets.
Right, exactly. And I will also put in that, in addition to your mentioning of John Bogle, is Bogleheads, is another organization that sort of expanded on it, on those philosophies as well, which is another good resource. And a lot of that is actually mentioned in some of these books as well. So,
Let's see. Follow up on the 25 or 30 number, 3 or 4% withdrawal. What is the number of years for average lifespan that are assumed in making that calculation? Is there an assumption?
Yeah, the 4% comes from the Trinity study, which was done several years ago, and it has actually been redone again, that they focused again mostly on a 30-year time frame, that they know that it's pretty much guaranteed that they would be successful, especially focused on I think they said, well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, in a more of a 50% stocks versus 50% bonds versus 60% stocks and 40% bond ratio is what they really looked at, and some people have said, there's other studies that have been done as well to focus that just because we've seen a completely different type of stock market in the last several years, that it'll, maybe it might be lower, maybe higher, we don't know.
Right. And again, I will reiterate, neither Holly nor I are investment advisors. So this is not our area to actually be giving individual advice. The 25 and 30 are benchmarks that you can use, but certainly if you're working with an investment advisor, they can put you through some Monte Carlo scenarios. They can figure out what is the potential that your nest egg is actually going to last the rest of your life if you are, drawing out a certain percentage. So that's certainly something you want to work with a professional with. But at these early stages, for people who are just interested in pursuing financial independence, it gives you something to aim for.
Absolutely, because you need to have some sort of ideas or what you're working towards. And this gives you, if you can calculate your expenses and multiply it by that number, and you can choose a bigger number if you wanted to. If you can go for 40, go for it. Give yourself start with maybe the 25, then work towards the 30. That way you have something to work towards.
And there was one more question. Does the 25 or 30 include leaving wealth for children, grandchildren, or legacies? And if not, how do you calculate that?
Great question. Again, that would be, that's a lot of people, like I say, they have different interpretations of the 4% rule. Some people will say oh my gosh, you'll still have plenty, in 30 years, you may not even be able to, you won't even touch the original amount that was invested. Others will say, oh my gosh, you would have started working towards that and there won't be a lot for legacy. So there is different interpretations of that. So I guess that would also be something to definitely talk to an advisor about. Jessica, do you have anything else to say?
The 25 to 30 is really to cover your living expenses in retirement. So if you if you anticipate wanting to leave a legacy, that should be calculated separate and apart, because that is not money that you would use to live on in retirement. So it's kind of a completely separate entity that you want to manage, apart from your retirement nest egg, or at least not count it toward it, because that's not going to be money for your living.
Yeah.
Well, I think those are all of the questions. If we'll do one last call to the chat, or if anybody wants to hop on their microphone and ask a question.
I have a question. First of all, thank you guys so much. This has been amazing. Will you be sharing the PowerPoint with the resources especially?
Yes.
Yes, that.
If you put your email in the chat to Beatley Library, you can send a private message and you can get a copy of all of the slides from today.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And also, we will be posting it on the library's YouTube page. We have recorded it, so if you want to watch it again, or if there's a part that you missed or would like to go through, that will be available probably in a couple weeks. Our digital services librarian is actually going on vacation, so we have to wait till she gets back, but it will be up eventually.
Okay, so let me go ahead and just do a quick conclusion here. And let's see if I can click here just to get my little icon to work here. So I just wanted to re-emphasize again that financial independence or FI is the moment your assets produce enough income for you to live off of for the rest of your life without the need to work for income. Again, this is a very general presentation. This is not specific for each individual, but this is a really good way to get you started, and so there's no right or wrong. So you just have to start working towards these goals. So, and thank you so much for being here. And of course, you can always let myself or Jessica know if you have any other questions. And here's my contact information one more time. And like Jessica mentioned, if you mention, contact either one of us, you can mention this presentation. You'll get a free 1-hour session to go over your financial situation, and we can ask you lots of questions and go over sort of some basics with you.
That's great. And I apologize if we missed anyone in the chat, but definitely if you have additional questions, Holly and I are available, and our contact information is here in the presentation, and you can get copies of the slides. And as Allison mentioned, it will also be on the YouTube. So please just shoot us an email if we didn't get a chance to get to you. But yes, thank you so much, Holly. This has been amazing.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. And here you go.
So yes, I just would like to thank everyone for coming. We have been having a lot of virtual events while the library has been closed. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the website we have here that has, if you go to alexlibraryva.org/event/virtual, we have a list of all the programs. Also, if you go to alexlibraryva.org/digital-collection, you can still check out digital books. Additionally, this week we have started curbside service at all of our Alexandria Library locations. So starting tomorrow, you can place new holds on books. So if you would like to come pick some up, we do have a contactless delivery. And another thing that I just remembered that we probably should put on the slides next time we do a financial program, Jessica, I do send out monthly emails with a listing of all the financial programs across the library system that we'll be having. So if anyone is interested in that, you can email the reference department at reflib@alexlibraryva.org. That's reflib as in reference librarian, and I can add you to that list and we'll let you know of any upcoming programs.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Can you say that one more time, the email address?
Yes, reflib, REFLIB @alexlibraryva.org.
And we can add that into the last slide so that everybody will have where they need to email to get onto the email list so that they can see the next presentation.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but I'm going to stay.